What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to do an introduction to chord progressions, focusing in on the 1 chord and the 4 chord. I've done a few videos on chords, how to read chords, modes, what the modes are, basic improvisation, and with all of those videos, I still get the same question about chord progressions all the time. So today, I'm gonna break it down into really simple terms so you can understand what chords are, how to approach them, and how they go together. So we're gonna start at the very beginning. If you're looking for a video on how to figure out what chord progressions are and where to start, this is your video. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. What is a chord progression? Chord progression is just a fancy way of saying the way the chords move in a song. Every single song from Mary Had a Little Lamb to a Beethoven symphony all have chord progressions. Obviously, some are more difficult than others, but every song has a chord progression. Taylor Swift has a chord progression. Charlie Parker songs have a chord progression. Every single song in between has some type of chord progression. So today we're going to talk about just a single chord progression, and we're going to talk about how those chords go together. We're going to talk about the 1 chord and the 4 chord. So what makes chords really intimidating and difficult for people who are beginning their journey into improvisation and reading chords is that there are several names for the same chord, and the words are kind of interchangeable, and a lot of people use different words to describe what's going on. So today I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of how it all goes together, and hopefully that will make it easier for you to figure out other chord progressions as you progress in your improv journey. Okay, so before we dive into this, you have to know your major scales before you start talking about chords, because the chords are based on the scales, and if you don't know your scales, there's no way you can play chords. Second, I have already done some videos on modes and chords, how to read chord symbols. If you've checked those videos out, this will make this video way easier, and it'll be kind of more of a refresher, or it might clear some things up because I'm going to talk about the chords in a couple different ways and how they can be named or used. Okay, so we are going to do the 1 chord and the 4 chord. We're going to do this in the key of G on the alto saxophone, so that would be C on tenor saxophone and trumpet, and that would be B flat for all of the C instruments out there. So we're going to play a G major scale because that is what everything is going to be based on. So we're going to play from G to G with an F sharp. Everything is based off the G scale. So our first chord is going to be a major triad on the 1. So we're in the key of G. So the first note of G is G. And a triad means 1, 3, 5. So we're going to play those 3 notes as our chord. So it would be G, B, and D. Those are the notes in your 1 chord. Now, I like to put the root on top when I'm playing triads. That way it gives me 4 notes. So if I was playing a measure of 4/4, that would give me enough notes. It'd be G, B, D, G. So I'd have 4 quarter notes in that measure. So if I'm doing chord outlines, it just makes it way easier. So I would play it like this. And then I'd play it back down. G, D, B, G. So that is all a 1 chord is. It is the 1, 3, and 5 in the key of the root. In this case, we're in the key of G. So it's the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th notes in the key of G. Okay, so the other chord we're going to talk about is the 4 chord. So if we are in the key of G, we go G, A, B, C. So that gives us C as our 4 chord. So the 4 chord would be starting a triad on the 4th degree, degree meaning note in the G major scale, and doing a triad. So the 4th note would be C, so we play C, E, G as our triad. C, E, G, and then put a C on top. So we're going to play a 1 chord, G, B, D, G. And then we're going to play a 4 chord, C, E, G, C. Now, I'm going to play those back to back, and you're going to hear the chord move. You're going to hear the chord progression. You're going to hear the movement in the chord. Did you hear that chord move? That is what a progression is, and that is moving in the progression of a 1 chord, because we're playing G in the key of G, and a 4 chord, which is C in the key of G. So that's a simple explanation of what the 1 chord and 4 chord are based on a major scale. If you're playing pop songs, you're going to see 1 chords and 4 chords like that all the time. Now, it just so happens that the 4 chord is also in the same key as the 1 chord. In other words, your 1 chord is G, B, D, and those notes are all in G, and your 4 chord is C, E, G. And even though all those notes are in your C scale, it's acting as the 4, 6, and 8 or 1 of your G scale. I know that can be a little bit confusing, but when you're talking about 1 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords, generally you're talking about the key of the root. So a great way to practice this progression is to do 2 measures of the 1 chord and 2 measures of the 4 chord. So we're going to do 2 measures of G and then 2 measures of C doing chord outlines. So it'll sound like this. So I just went G, B, D, G, G, D, B, G. I just went up and down, so that was 2 measures. Now I'm going to switch to the 4. Again, I went C, E, G, C, and then repeated backwards, C, G, E, C. So I'll put the whole thing together. So that is the progression of your 1 chord going to your 4 chord. Now, a great way to practice that and to try to do some improv on it is to come up with ideas using those notes and improvise using it. So you're going to do the notes, you're going to use the notes G, B, and D for the 1 chord, and C, E, and G for the 4 chord, and you're just going to switch up the order and repeat some notes so it sounds more improvised. It'll sound like this. I'll start off easy, and I'll make it more difficult as I go along. I'm going to keep repeating it. I'm going to go 1 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 4 chord, back to 1 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 4 chord, so on and so forth. And I'll get more difficult as I go along, but I'm only going to use notes that are in the chord. So this is what it'll sound like. So, did you hear how the whole time I was just using that 1 chord, G, B, D, and the notes in the 4 chord, C, E, G, and I was coming up with ideas to improvise. So that's a really good way of chord outline soloing your chord progressions to get really comfortable with the progression. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you now understand what a chord progression is and where the 1 and the 4 chords come from, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, and share it with your friends. Thanks a lot.